Football at 4 is powered by the Inside the Birds podcast. It's brought to you by Bet365. Whatever the sport, whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. Adam Caplan from the Inside the Birds podcast, InsideTheBirds.com, and the Inside the Birds YouTube channel, which you can get on all platforms. Inside the Birds right now for Football at 4 with Adam Caplan on a happy hour Friday. He joins us here on the Sports Bash. What's going on, Adam? How are you?
Mike, good to talk to you. I enjoyed the discussion you and Josh were having about, how are these teams building themselves, and what kind of message are they sending? The Flyers discussion. You talk about the trade deadline, and Sixers and Phillies are obvious. They're trying to go for it. They traded away some prospects at the trade deadline. Unfortunately, they didn't get a ring. But the Eagles are interesting as we could start off with that, Mike. They're kind of under the philosophy, and we said this when Jeff and I were doing our shows when Nick Sirianni came in. The Eagles, they wouldn't say it publicly, but we had talked to some NFL people and agents who talked to the Eagles heading into the 21 offseason, and they were kind of in a rebuild. They hated. They won't say it publicly. They were in a rebuild. And it's really remarkable, Mike, what they've been able to do over a series of years of good free agency moves. Obviously, last year's was phenomenal, and really good drafting. That's where Howie Roseman has really improved as a general manager. And then you also should, Mike, know that Jeffrey Lurie's support of Howie through his toughest of times, the 2020 season, and to support him and let him do his job and not interfere. We had mentioned previously, probably the 2020 season, when we thought he got too involved, but it's been Howie all the way here, and it's clear they're not a team that feels it needs to rebuild. They obviously don't win the Super Bowl. They're going to just reload a little bit. That's what they're going to do here.
Well, and one of the parts of reloading is, look, free agency starts Monday, and you don't have to be swinging for the fences with a big player every single free agent. The Eagles are generally involved, with big names because, Howie does his due diligence. But this feels like the kind of free agent period where Monday comes and they're probably not at the top of the news list unless they lose some of their guys.
Well, that we're expecting. Milt Williams in particular, barring a surprise. But yeah, I would, but I'd be careful. Also, the Eagles are really good at looking at the cut list when players are cut at positions of need where they know they don't have to do anything drastic, but they could use perhaps a defensive tackle that becomes available, or an edge rusher that's cut, or a cornerback's gets cut, because they certainly have a pretty significant need there with the Darius Slay release. So, they've as we start here, Mike, and free agency starts 12 o'clock on Monday, when the agreements, you cannot sign. By the way, the rule is this, so people understand. The agent for a player who's got guys who are free agents, they could talk to other teams for their players, but the player cannot talk to that new team until 4 p.m. Eastern on Wednesday. They could say whatever they want to them. So that's why you see a couple things happen, Mike. It happens at every free agency that there were one or two reports that a player is going to sign with a certain team. Well, then the guy changes his mind. No better example of the Frank Gore story that Adam Schefter and I put out. Was it 2015? Yeah, it was the year that Howie was reassigned, and Frank changed his mind. He decided he didn't want to play for Chip Kelly. So, but we never said he was signing there. He told people he planned to sign there, but he couldn't sign because he couldn't sign until this new league year. So just be careful of some of the reports out there. A couple guys will change their mind.
Yeah, and we know that, one thing for Philadelphia is they got one guy off the market. Before we get to some of their needs, let's get quick thoughts on Zack Baun. 3 years, 51. We kind of talked about, is he a guy that they want to make sure they get back? Well, they answered that question this week. 3 years, $51 million, $30+ million. Man, Jeffrey Lurie's probably got a cramp in his hand with the $30 million checks he wrote this week.
Yes, that one I think was $34 million fully guaranteed signing. We've not got the structure yet, but just to be clear, Mike, I tried to explain this to you a couple times. Let's say Zack Baun asked for. Let's put it this way: you had asked me for several weeks where I thought Zack Baun was coming back. I said yes, very good, strong chance. He wants to be back. They want him back, But what he did say is, look, if his agent, if the representatives of CAA said to the Eagles, listen, we want Roquan Smith's deal and we're not budging, well, then he would not be an Eagle. That's a difference. There was no way you could ask for. There was no way you were getting that deal if you're Zack Baun for one great season. You have to put two great together, then you could get that type of deal. So that was my only thing. I just warned people that just be careful of certain assumptions until we actually know what he's asking for or willing to accept. And he took the fourth highest APY. That's called average per season, average per year, and it's a really good deal. As Jeff and I talked about on Inside the Birds, it's a very fair deal. He didn't get Roquan Smith. He didn't have to take the Patrick Queen deal. He got it right in the middle. It was just really right down the middle. Honestly, it was where it should have been. We want to see the structure, but
yeah.
The Eagles stepped it up. He's look, let's put whether he's a priority or not, that doesn't really matter. The guy was an All-Pro. This is a player that had nothing to do with the Eagles' positional priority. The Eagles have never had to make a decision with an All-Pro. They don't walk away from All-Pros. That's the point.
Well, they brought the All-Pro back. They brought the other All-Pro back. They got both Baun and Barkley back with the Birds, and maybe they get Becton. We'll see. Williams and Sweat most likely to go. But let's get Adam's quick takes on. They are going to be a player in free agency, but it might not be till that second or third wave. What are some of the needs? We talked about this the other day, Adam. Like, okay, here's a blank check for Howie Roseman on the first day of free agency. They don't really have like that big name guy they have to go get in free agency, but they still have to do some things. What are some of the needs? Let's look at offense first.
Yeah, Mike, and as we detailed on our show this week, on a couple of our shows, this is the year of the mid-level free agent. There are very few blue-chip prospects, or I should say players. Prospects are college players, but veterans or even young veterans like Milton Williams. Milton Williams is the top free agent defensive tackle. There's no question about it. There are a couple guys who were cut. Draymond Jones, who we talked about on today's show, who's a really good football player who unfortunately just never worked out for him. He was not used correctly with Seattle. But the Eagles could be players for guys who were released. And by the way, those don't count against the compensatory formula. So that's something we'll keep an eye on. So let's look at what, heading into free agency, Mike, and free agency most of the time is about immediate needs. The draft is for future needs. Now, there are instances where you get a guy in free agency who could be with your team 3 or 4 years. Saquon Barkley was for now and for the future. But they do have a need in back of Saquon Barkley with Kenny Gainwell's contract up. They badly need somebody who could protect. If Gainwell does not come back, if he signs elsewhere, it would be for more money because the Eagles definitely want him back. But if it was for more money, they got to find somebody who could block, Mike. Saquon is an average pass protector. Gainwell is a very good pass protector. He's by far the best pass protector. Offensive line depth, Mike. With Becton, I would not count on them coming back based on what we know. The Eagles have some interest. It depends on what he's asking for. They have leverage in this deal because they have Tyler Steen, who they would draft to be their right guard. So we'll keep an eye on that. And then tight end, Mike, with Dallas Goedert in the last year of his deal, we've talked about this on Inside the Birds for weeks. We don't see him being released, if anything, traded, or they have to make a decision on how they're going to bring him back with his contract. Making just over $14 million, no guaranteed money. Most veterans don't like to come back in situations like that. That's a situation to watch. I know the rumors out there that they're going to trade him. We've been talking about this on Patreon for a couple weeks. We didn't think he'd be back. We don't know that as a fact, to be clear. Mm-hmm. But for our Patreon members, they know that what we've told. We have different reasons we're not going to get into right now, but we have some reasons why we don't think he'll be back, but it's not a lock. There is, let's put it this way, Mike, it's kind of a fluid situation. There's a saying in the National Football League, if you want to move your player who's your replacement, there are 0 replacements for Dallas Goedert on the roster. It's not a good free agency for tight end. However, Mike, there are about 7 quality starting type tight ends in this draft. That is rare. There are 4 really good, and I'm told there are 3 other guys you certainly consider to be starters. And the other thing, Mike, is you need guys who could block and catch and be athletic. Those guys are hard to find. So we'll see how this Goddard thing's fascinating. I'm interested to see how this works out.
Real quick on Becton, if he walks, is it in your mind Steen or do they look to sign? There's a couple guards in free agency. Or they just put Steen in there, or do they look? Do they not view him as a starting right guard?
It's Steen with competition. That's why I would say it. His tape, we were told, was mixed. There were signs really early this season when he had to come and play. Boy, did he look good! And you saw some signs last year, signs in the off season, and then Becton shocked us, Mike. It's one of yet another reason why this team won a Super Bowl, Mike. The things you cannot predict. A guy who never played inside in his life, who did get in the best shape of his career. We should mention that with Mekhi Becton.
Yeah.
And he played well. He had some games where he didn't play well. Technique, it was a little bit awkward for him as we understand it, because the techniques that you use inside are different from when you play a tackle. So that was a little bit of a challenge for him. But Tyler Steen, let's not forget, was drafted to be the right guard. But there are a lot of, let's put it this way, there are a decent amount of guys out there, but there aren't a lot of, like what you'd say, solid guys at guard that are out there. We have to be careful with the list. There are a lot of them, but not all of them are very good.
Yeah. Just, we'll see if Becton stays or goes. That's on the offensive side of the ball. Defense. Obviously, some of their key free agents with Williams and Sweat are on the defense, so they're most likely going to have to try to look at some needs there. Where else are they going to be kicking the tires on that second or third level of free agency?
Yeah, no question. A defensive tackle, Mike, is a need. There's no doubt. Unless Milt Williams-Shackleton comes back. It's not, again, that they don't want him back. They'd love to have him back, but in fact, they tried a lot during the regular season. Milton smartly knew he was playing great. Other teams knew this, and he's going to get a monster deal. We warned our Patreon people it was around the Senior Bowl at the late January, early February. Yeah, it was before I went to the Super Bowl. You're talking about nearly 6 weeks ago that it's going to be tough to keep him because the deal that we're hearing he's going to get is over $20 million per season. I still feel that way, Mike. I'd be stunned. By the way, Osa Odighizuwa, the D tackle for the Cowboys, that's the floor for the deal. The floor would be $20 million a season. He should get more than that. He'll get between Aleem McNeil's deal, which is $24.5 million per season, and I'd say $21 million, somewhere around there. That's what he should get. You never say never with this stuff, but that's what he should get. It's a need, Mike. Moro Ojomo played about a third of the defensive snaps. He did a good job in his role, but asking him to play 60 to 70% of the snaps and be as effective, that's certainly a challenge.
All right, real quick before Adam Caplan goes, this is the time right now these teams are trying to figure out what to do, and high-profile names are starting to hit the free agent market. You got Jonathan Allen. You got guys who can now be traded. Hey, call us. Trey Hendrickson is available. Do you think Howie gets intrigued by any of the high-profile cuts or makes calls for some of these big names that have now permission to get traded?
Yeah, so I know there are rumors about Howard Landry being released. Howard Landry is a guy that his sack numbers don't measure the pressure rate. His pressure rate is not very good. His sack numbers are good, but Mike, sacks are literally individual plays. They're like 5% of the total plays for the season, so you have to be careful. It's about tape and pressure numbers. Landry's a smaller end, by the way. They need a guy with size as an edge rusher. So I would say when we talk Tuesday, Mike, it would not surprise us if they've added a D tackle and a cornerback, particularly corner. This has nothing to do with Isaiah Rodgers. If they do anything, it would be for a guy either come in and start a corner or compete for the starting cornerback job. They need an edge rusher. But on Inside the Birds, Mike, we are very high on Jalen Sutton. We have been since he was drafted. He played more than they expected. He was not supposed to play last season. He was going to be the fifth edge rusher. He was also inactive week one, which tells you that he wasn't going to play. But he wound up playing because of injuries and what happened with Bryce Huff. And he's a guy that they're very high on, so keep an eye on that. So they'll be active week one, but I would agree with the assessment. I don't see the Saquon Barkley situation unless it came in a trade, and you never know.
All right, there's Adam Caplan for today's Football at 4, powered by the Inside the Birds podcast. And, of course, Monday, it all starts. The free agent legal tampering is underway. Tuesday, Adam will be back to break down what we know. And then, of course, Football at 4 all week long here on the Sports Bash. Thanks, buddy.
You got it. Thanks.